You're living in Vault 87, trusting the Overseer who saved your sister's life, who knows every resident by name, who's protected your underground family for 23 years. But then you discover she's been receiving orders from a Vault-Tec, command that should have been dead for over a century. This video reveals the true story of how 400 people became test subjects in their own home, and why the woman who raised us had been planning our transformation since before we were born. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if it truly resonates with you. The worst part isn't the betrayal itself. It's learning that she genuinely believed she was, saving us, even as she injected us with the FEV virus that would turn us into tomorrow's monsters. If you're hearing this, then you've found what's left of Vault 87's real records, not the sanitized logs they keep in the archives, not the propaganda they feed to new generations. This is the truth, recorded on a salvaged holotape I've kept hidden for 12 years now. My name is Marcus Chen, and I need you to understand something before I continue. I loved my Overseer once. We all did. That's what makes this so much harder to tell. You have to understand what it's like growing up in a vault. The walls become your sky, the recycled air becomes your weather, and the Overseer becomes God. Not in the religious sense, though some treated it that way, but in the practical, everyday sense that matters. They decide who eats what, who marries whom, who gets medical treatment when supplies run low. In Vault 87, Overseer Katherine Marsh held our lives in her hands, and for 23 years, those hands seemed gentle. I still remember the day she saved my sister. Sarah had caught the fever that swept through C Block when our water purification system failed. 17 people sick. Only enough antibiotics for 10. The computer's selection algorithm had already made its cold calculations based on genetic diversity, age, and utility scores. Sarah wasn't on the list. She was 11, slightly asthmatic, scored average on aptitude tests. The machine said she was expendable, but Overseer Marsh came down to the medical bay herself. I can still see her silver hair pulled back in that severe bun, her vault suit pressed with military precision. She looked at the list, then at my parents crying in the corner, then at Sarah burning up on that narrow cot. Without a word, she deleted the algorithm's choices and rewrote the list by hand. Sarah got her antibiotics. So did all 17 sick residents. Marsh had been hoarding medical supplies in her personal reserve, she said, for exactly such emergencies. "We don't leave family behind in Vault 87, she announced to the gathered crowd. "We are not numbers in a machine. We are human beings." The vault erupted in applause. My father actually wept. That night, someone spray-painted "Marsh Protects" on the corridor wall outside her office. She left it there for 3 months before maintenance finally painted over it. But by then, the phrase had already become our unofficial motto, "Marsh Protects." If you've ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments. I'll be reading them. Looking back now, I realize that was the moment she truly owned us, not through fear or force, but through carefully orchestrated mercy. Every Overseer learns the same lesson in their sealed training files. Control through crisis, loyalty through selective salvation. Create the problem, provide the solution, become the savior. We just didn't know about the training files yet, didn't know about the experiments, didn't know that Vault-Tec had given her a very different mission than keeping us safe. For years, Vault 87 ran like clockwork under her guidance. She implemented the fairness protocols. Everyone worked, everyone ate, everyone contributed. She held town halls every month where residents could voice concerns. She even established the birthday tradition, where she'd personally visit every child on their birthday with a small gift from the precious pre-war supplies. A comic book here, a toy car there, sometimes just an old photograph of the world above. Small gestures that meant everything when you lived in a steel tomb. She knew our names, all 412 of us. She knew that Tommy Chen, no relation to me, despite the shared surname, couldn't sleep without his nightlight, because the darkness reminded him of the power outage that killed his mother. She knew that Mrs. Patterson in D Block made the best protein paste casserole in the entire vault, though God knows how she managed that with our limited ingredients. She knew that I wanted to be a systems engineer, that I spent my free hours studying the vault's schematics, trying to understand how our underground world functioned. "Marcus," she said to me once, finding me in maintenance level 3, studying the water recycling systems. I was 16, gangly, more comfortable with machines than people. "You have the mind of an engineer but the heart of a protector. That's rare." She pulled up an old crate and sat beside me, pointing at the filtration diagram. "See this secondary bypass? It's not in the official manual." "Why not?" I asked. "Because sometimes," she said, her grey eyes meeting mine, "the most important systems are the ones they don't tell you about. The ones that really keep us safe operate in shadow. Remember that." I thought she was talking about redundancy protocols, backup systems for emergencies. I had no idea she was preparing me to understand what she really was. A shadow system herself, operating on protocols we never knew existed. The first crack in the facade came 3 years later. It started with something small, a discrepancy in the food logs. As junior systems engineer by then, I had access to consumption records. We were supposedly producing enough food for 450 people, yet we only had 412 residents. The surplus should have been massive, but our stockpiles remained constant. Where was the extra food going? When I brought it to Marsh's attention, she smiled that maternal smile that had comforted us all for decades. "Excellent observation, Marcus. You're right. We do produce a surplus. I've been having it processed and stored in deep freeze on level 7, insurance against catastrophe. After all, we don't know how long we'll be down here." It made perfect sense. Marsh protects. She was thinking ahead, planning for our future. I filed the report and forgot about it for 6 months, until the day I was recalibrating sensors on level 7 and discovered there was no deep freeze storage. The entire level was sealed behind a door that required Overseer-only access. The terminal beside it displayed a simple message: "Experiment, Chamber 87A, authorized personnel only." My hands shook as I stood before that door. Every instinct told me to walk away, to trust in the woman who'd saved my sister, who'd held this vault together through every crisis. But that word, experiment, lodged in my brain like a splinter. Vault-Tec built the vaults to save us, didn't they? What kind of experiments could they possibly need in a shelter designed for preservation? I started paying attention to things I'd previously ignored. The medical examinations that seemed unnecessarily thorough, collecting blood samples every month to monitor for radiation exposure, despite our sensors showing zero contamination. The psychological evaluations that asked strange questions. If you had to choose between saving your child or saving 10 strangers, what would you do? The way certain residents would be called to private meetings with Marsh and return. Different, quieter, more compliant. Then came the morning that changed everything. October 23rd, 2290. Exactly 213 years after the bombs fell. I was running routine diagnostics when I picked up an unauthorized transmission from Marsh's private terminal. The encryption was complex, but not complex enough to stop someone who'd been studying vault systems since childhood. The message was brief. Phase 3 initialization approved. Begin selection protocol 87A. Anticipated yield 60%. Ensure documentation of psychological markers pre- and post-exposure. Control group to remain unaware. Vault-Tec command. Vault-Tec command. They were supposed to be dead. The world above was supposed to be ash and radiation. How was she receiving orders from anyone, let alone an organization that should have been vaporized 2 centuries ago? And what was selection protocol 87A? I needed answers, but I couldn't confront Marsh directly. If she was receiving orders, if she was conducting some kind of experiment on us, then approaching her would only paint a target on my back. Instead, I did what I did best. I dove into the systems, following data trails, tracking anomalies, piecing together a picture from fragments of information. the water purification failure that nearly killed my sister. The log showed manual override codes entered 2 hours before the system crashed. The food shortage that led to the first rationing. Protocols? Supplies had been diverted to Section 7 weeks in advance. Every crisis we'd faced, every moment that brought us together under Marsh's protective leadership, all of them showed signs of careful orchestration. We weren't survivors of random disasters. We were subjects in a controlled experiment, and our beloved Overseer was the one holding the clipboard, documenting our responses. But understanding the betrayal and proving it were two different things. And even if I could prove it, what then? Turn the Vault against the woman who'd kept us alive for over 2 decades. Start a revolution in a sealed environment where violence could destroy life support systems we all depended on. I was 19 years old, trusted Marsh like a grandmother, and suddenly I was carrying the weight of knowing our protector was our predator, and the predator was about to show her teeth. 3 days after I decoded that transmission, the selections began. Marsh called it a vocational aptitude reassessment. Bureaucratic enough to sound boring, urgent enough that compliance was mandatory. Every resident between ages 18 and 35 was to report for enhanced evaluation. The tests would take place in Section 7, groups of 20, over the course of 2 weeks. I was in the 3rd group. Walking down that previously forbidden corridor felt like descending into my own grave. The walls were different here. Older somehow, with pipes and conduits that didn't match the rest of the Vault's architecture. This wasn't a later addition. Section 7 had been built with the Vault, designed from the beginning for whatever was about to happen to us. The testing chamber was sterile white, filled with medical equipment I didn't recognize. Dr. Harrison was there, our chief medical officer, a man who'd delivered half the babies in the Vault. But he wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. His hands trembled as he prepared syringes filled with luminescent green fluid. Just a new vitamin supplement, he mumbled when someone asked. Vault-Tec's latest innovation to combat long-term underground living. We all knew he was lying. You could see it in the sweat beading on his forehead, the way his voice cracked on the word supplement. But Marsh stood at the back of the room, watching, and her presence carried the weight of 2 decades of trust. Even knowing what I knew, part of me wanted to believe this was for our own good. The injection burned, not like fire, but like ice, spreading through my veins with a cold that made my bones ache. Within minutes, 3 people in my group had collapsed. Within an hour, 5 were dead. Genetic incompatibility, Marsh announced calmly, making notes on her clipboard. Their DNA couldn't process the enhancement. The rest of you are proceeding. As expected, enhancement. She called it enhancement while Tommy Chen, yes, the one afraid of the dark, convulsed on the floor, green foam bubbling from his mouth. His nightlight wouldn't help him now. Nothing would. Those of us who survived the initial injection were separated into 2 groups. I was designated Control Group B, which meant observation, but no further intervention. Yet. The other group, Active Group A, was taken deeper into Section 7. We could hear screaming from behind the sealed doors. Not pain screaming. That would have been merciful. This was the sound of minds breaking, of something fundamental in their humanity being torn away and rebuilt into something else. They kept us in Section 7 for 72 hours. No explanation, no food, minimal water, just observation rooms where technicians, people I'd grown up with, shared meals with, monitored our vital signs and whispered data into recorders. On the 2nd day, I heard Dr. Harrison arguing with Marsh outside my cell. This is beyond the parameters, he insisted. The FEV strain is too aggressive. We're seeing mutation rates that are exactly within Vault-Tec's projected models. Marsh cut him off. Check the data from Vault 87's predecessor facilities. The evolutionary virus needs specific environmental stressors to achieve optimal expression. We're creating those stressors. FEV, Forced Evolutionary Virus. I'd heard whispers of it from traders who sometimes made contact through our emergency frequencies. Stories of super mutants in the Capital Wasteland. Humans transformed into massive, green-skinned monstrosities. Vault-Tec hadn't just been experimenting with the virus. They'd been perfecting it, using vaults like ours as laboratories. What do you think really happened here? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd like to know if I'm the only one who feels this way. On the third day, they brought Active Group A back, or what was left of them. The changes were subtle at first. Increased muscle density, heightened aggression, a greenish tint to their skin that could have been the lighting. But their eyes were wrong. Empty. Like whatever had made them human had been scooped out and replaced with something primitive and hungry. Janet Morrison, who used to teach the children in Block B, tried to bite through the throat of a guard. She had to be restrained with chains meant for industrial equipment. Phase 1 successful, Marsh announced to her unseen superiors through the terminal. 15% immediate mortality, 30% successful mutation, 55% serving as control baseline. Proceeding to Phase 2. Environmental Catalyst Introduction. Environmental Catalyst. Such a clinical term for what came next. They released us back into the general population, but Section 7 remained active. Every week, more residents were called for routine health screenings that left them changed or dead. The Vault's carefully maintained order began to crack. Families demanded answers about missing loved ones. Work schedules collapsed as people refused to leave their quarters. The unity Marsh had spent decades building crumbled in weeks. That's when she played her masterstroke. During an emergency Vault meeting, with tensions at their breaking point, Marsh revealed a terrible truth. She claimed to have discovered that Vault-Tec had installed a secret protocol in Section 7, one that activated automatically after 200 years. The experiments, the deaths, all of it was Vault-Tec's doing, forcing her hand. She presented herself as a victim, just like us, trapped by programming she couldn't override. "I've been trying to minimize the damage," she said, tears streaming down her face. "And God help me, they looked real. Every selection I've made has been to save as many as possible. The computer wanted to take 60% of you. I've kept it to 30. The Vault turned on itself. Those who believed her formed a loyalist faction. Those who saw through the deception joined a growing resistance. Families split, friends became enemies, and through it all, the experiments continued. The FEV spread beyond the injection sites, contaminating water supplies, food stores, even the air recycling systems. People who'd never been to Section 7 began showing symptoms: increased aggression, minor mutations, paranoid delusions. Documented everything, every anomaly, every cover-up, every impossible order from the supposedly dead Vault-Tec command. I built a case that would have been irrefutable in any court of law, but we weren't in a court. We were in a cage, and the zookeeper had no interest in justice. The breaking point came when they took Sarah. My sister, now 24, working in the agricultural sector. She wasn't on any selection list, hadn't shown any symptoms, but Marsh needed leverage, and she knew I'd been accessing restricted systems. Sarah was her insurance policy. "Your sister is participating in a special program," Marsh told me in her office, that same maternal smile on her face. "She's helping us find a cure for the mutations." Noble work, really. Of course, the stress of the procedures can be significant. Having a supportive brother who follows protocol would greatly improve her chances of survival. The threat was clear: comply or Sarah dies. But Sarah was stronger than Marsh anticipated. She'd survived the fever as a child through sheer will, as much as antibiotics. When they injected her with the FEV, something unexpected happened. She didn't mutate, she didn't die, she adapted. The virus enhanced her without destroying her humanity. Faster reflexes, increased strength, heightened intelligence. She became what Vault-Tec had been trying to create all along. The next evolution of humanity, controlled and weaponized. But they hadn't counted on her retaining her mind, her memories, her rage. Sarah escaped Section 7 after killing 2 guards with her bare hands. She found me in my quarters at 3 a.m. her skin faintly luminescent with a green that pulsed like a heartbeat. "We're ending this," she said. "Tonight." The resistance had been planning for weeks, but Sarah's escape accelerated everything. We had 43 people ready to move, armed with improvised weapons and stolen security codes. The plan was simple. Take the Overseer's office, broadcast the truth to any surviving vaults or settlements, then open the main door and let people choose, stay in Marsh's experimental hell or face the wasteland above. But plans never survive first contact with reality, especially when your enemy has been playing this game for decades. And Marsh had been playing it longer than any of us had been alive. We struck at midnight. Sarah led the assault team while I worked to override the security systems. For 12 minutes, we thought we were winning. We'd taken the armory, secured the communications center, and were advancing on the Overseer's office when the lights went out. Not just lights, everything. Life support, door controls, even the emergency lighting. The vault plunged into absolute darkness, the kind that makes you forget light ever existed. Then Marsh's voice echoed through the halls, calm, as always, transmitted through hidden speakers we'd never known existed. "Residents of Vault 87, you are experiencing Protocol 7. This is not a malfunction, this is a feature." In the darkness, we heard them coming. The active Group A subjects, the ones who'd been transformed weeks ago. They could see in the dark now, another enhancement of the FEV. They moved through the corridors like hunting animals, guided by Marsh's voice, targeting resistance members with surgical precision. The screaming started in Section C, then B, then all around us. Sarah grabbed my hand, her skin hot with mutation, glowing just enough that I could see her face. "The reactor level," she whispered. "She can't control that manually." We fought our way down, stepping over bodies I tried not to recognize in Sarah's dim green light. The reactor level was the vault's heart, massive fusion generators that had run for 2 centuries without fail. If we could access the manual controls, we could restore power, override Marsh's lockdown. But she was already there, standing before the main console like she'd been expecting us. Not fleeing, not fighting, just waiting. "Hello, Marcus." Sarah. She looked older in the reactor's emergency lighting, the decades of deception finally showing in the lines of her face. "I wondered when you'd piece it together." "You killed them," Sarah snarled, her muscles tensing for an attack. "Dozens of us, hundreds, over the years. 438 to be precise," Marsh said. "Every death meticulously documented, every psychological break carefully analyzed, every successful mutation catalogued for future reference." She turned to face us fully, and I saw she was holding a holotape. Gold-banded, Vault-Tec executive issue. "Would you like to know why?" "We know why," I spat. "Vault-Tec's sick experiments. Vault-Tec is dead." She said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, that it stopped me cold. Has been for 160 years. The last command bunker went dark in 2130. The messages I've been receiving? I've been sending them to myself, following a protocol established before the bombs fell. The truth was worse than the lie. Every vault was given a primary experiment, yes, but the Overseers were given a secondary directive known only to us. If Vault-Tec Command ever ceased to exist, we were to continue the experiments independently, to preserve the data, to ensure that when humanity finally rebuilt, they would have the knowledge we'd gained. She inserted the holotape into the console. The FEV trials, the psychological breaking points, the mutation thresholds. 23 Overseers before me added to this recording. I'm the 24th. "You had a choice," Sarah growled, stepping forward. "You could have stopped. Could." "I?" Marsh laughed, but there was no joy in it. "I was selected at age 5, Marcus, raised in the Overseer's corridor, trained on these protocols before I learned to read. My predecessor, Overseer Chen. Yes, your great-grandfather, Marcus. He tried to resist once. The Vault's automated systems pumped neurotoxin through the vents. 80 people died before he resumed the experiments. My legs nearly gave out. My own family, part of this generational horror. The vault isn't a shelter, Marsh continued. It's an organism, programmed to survive and complete its purpose regardless of human will. Every overseer learns this eventually. We can guide the experiments, minimize casualties, maintain some semblance of humanity, or we can resist and watch the automated protocols kill everyone. She pulled up a screen showing complex code. This is Directive 87A, hard-coded into the Vault's base systems. In 48 hours, it will release concentrated FEV into the main water supply. Not the diluted strains we've been using, the pure version, the one with a 97% mortality rate. You're lying, I said, but I was already scanning the code. It was real, embedded so deep in the Vault's programming that removing it would require shutting down life support entirely. I've been delaying it for 3 years, Marsh said quietly, falsifying data, sending fake progress reports to a command structure that doesn't exist, trying to find a way to break the cycle. But the system adapts. It learns. Each generation of Overseer has less autonomy than the last. Sarah's glow intensified. So you chose to make us monsters instead. I chose to make you survivors. For the first time, real emotion crept into Marsh's voice. The FEV in your system, Sarah, it's not the weapon Vault-Tec wanted. It's my modification. 20 years of careful adjustments to create a strain that enhances without destroying. You're not a monster. You're immune. The automated release won't affect you or the others who've been successfully treated. The others are insane. The first generation, yes, but their children won't be. The mutation will stabilize, become hereditary. In 2 generations, maybe 3, Vault 87 will produce humans capable of surviving anything the Wasteland can create. She looked at me. Your engineering skills, Marcus, combined with Sarah's enhancements, your children would inherit both. They could rebuild the world. Our children. I felt sick. You've been breeding us. I've been saving you, the only way I knew how. That's when the real Protocol 7 activated. The screens around us lit up with a new message. Overseer deviation. Detected. Implementing correction. Marsh's eyes widened. The first time I'd ever seen her truly afraid. No. I submitted the reports. The data was complete. Gas hissed from vents we hadn't even known existed. Not neurotoxin, something worse. Marsh collapsed first. Her body convulsing as the chemicals rewrote her nervous system. Not killing her, but changing her. Turning her into something compliant, obedient, a puppet for protocols that no longer had masters. Sarah grabbed me, her enhanced strength the only thing that got us to the emergency hatch before the gas reached us. We sealed ourselves in a maintenance tunnel as the vault tore itself apart, above us. The automated systems had decided Marsh's modifications were themselves an experiment to be tested to destruction. We listened through the walls as our home destroyed itself. The resistance, the loyalists, the innocent. None of it mattered to the machine following its program. Some were transformed like Marsh. Others were killed outright. The screaming lasted for 6 hours. When we finally emerged, Vault 87 was silent, not empty. We found survivors hiding in sealed rooms in ventilation shafts, anywhere the gas couldn't reach. 43 souls out of over 400. Sarah led us to the Overseer's office, where we found Marsh still alive, but vacant. She responded to basic commands, performed simple tasks, but the woman who'd raised us and betrayed us was gone. The main door controls were unlocked. The system no longer cared about keeping us contained. The experiment was complete. We opened the door to find the wasteland waiting. Radiation storms on the horizon. The ruins of Boston visible in the distance. Raiders, super mutants, all the horrors we'd been protected from. But also, sky. Real sky. Grey and poisoned, but infinite. Freedom. Terrible and absolute. Some stayed. Even knowing the truth, the vault was all they'd known. They maintained the reactor, grew food, pretended things could return to normal. Others left immediately, preferring the honest danger outside to the lies within. Sarah and I stayed for 3 months, documenting everything. Every experiment, every death, every name. We found records of other vaults, other experiments. Vault 111, cryogenic preservation to study isolation psychosis. Vault 75, genetic refinement through selective breeding and termination. Vault 95, addiction rehabilitation with planned relapse protocols. Each one a petri dish, growing humanity's future through suffering. Before we left, I asked Marsh, or the shell that had been Marsh, one question. I had to phrase it simply, repeatedly, before the damaged thing that had been her mind could process it. Was there ever a way to win? She stared at nothing for a long time. Then, in a voice like a broken recording, the only winning move was never to be chosen. Sarah and I left that night, walking into the radiation storms with 41 others, who chose the unknown over the unbearable known. We found settlements, learned to survive. Sarah's mutations made her valuable to the Brotherhood of Steel, though she never let them know the source. I became a trader, carrying supplies and stories between communities, but I kept this recording, this truth, because somewhere out there are other vaults still running their experiments, other overseers believing they're in control, other residents trusting in their protection. They need to know what we learned in blood and betrayal. The vaults were never meant to save us. They were meant to change us. And the cruelest joke of all, it worked. Sarah and the others who survived with the FEV modifications, they really are better adapted to this dead world. Their children thrive where pure humans struggle. In trying to destroy us, Vault-Tec accidentally gave us the tools to survive. Them. Overseer Katherine Marsh died believing she was saving us. The automated systems killed her believing they were saving the experiment. We left believing we were saving ourselves. But the Wasteland teaches you the hardest truth of all. In this world, there's no saving. There's only surviving one day, one betrayal, one impossible choice at a time. If you find this recording, if you're in a vault right now listening to this, look at your overseer. Really look at them. See the weight they carry, the lies they tell, the person they used to be before the protocols made them into an instrument of experimentation. Then ask yourself, when your Protocol 7 comes, when your selection begins, when your trust becomes betrayal, will you